Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for a bit more Storycraft, a little bit more on plot structures, macro plot structures. I've talked about the 3-act plot structure and I've talked about the 5-act plot structure. Today it's time to talk about one that is a lot more loosey-goosey and a lot more fun to be creative with in some ways, and that is the Odyssey plot structure. Takes its name from, of course, Homer's Odyssey. And the main thing about the Odyssey plot structure is that you are not dividing your narrative up into anything close to equal parts, and you're not even dividing it up into areas that are separated by events like you are with the 3 or the 5-act structure. You're not looking at, in this part of the story I need to have characters reacting to this event. That's not how this works at all. Rather, just like the Odyssey, you have a series of encapsulated episodes that move the story forward towards its conclusion, usually moving the characters through space, across lands, or through the sea to some end point in their journey. So with the Odyssey, Odysseus is trying to get home to his wife, and he has all kinds of problems along the way getting there. You go to like the island of the Cyclops, the Lotus Eaters. Each of those episodes is a different adventure that challenges Odysseus and his crew in a different way, offers different temptations, offers different moral lessons, helps Odysseus grow in different ways until he reaches his final conclusion. Now, that's not the only story that's used that. There's been some really, really great stories that have used the Odyssey plot structure. One of the most famous is probably this one right here, The Hobbit, by J.R.R. Tolkien. This one, rather than using, say, a 3 or a 5-act plot structure, is just an Odyssey. You have Bilbo starting at his house and going to the Lonely Mountain, and each chapter is a different episode of that journey, and it centers around a different geographic location, just like the Odyssey. And in each geographic location, there's some kind of growth that happens with Bilbo. There's some kind of challenge for the party that's either setting them back on their journey or is helping them to move forward. So, they encounter the trolls, and the Gandalf has to save them from the trolls after they almost get turned into jelly. They get captured by goblins. Bilbo finds a magic ring. They escape from the goblins. They get caught by wargs in the trees, and the eagles save them. All of these different little areas have a different set of events that are kind of wrapped up into one little ball, and taken in context, each of them moves the party closer to that final goal of getting to Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, and trying to steal the treasure from Smaug. So this is a great example of the Odyssey plot structure. You could easily, with an Odyssey plot structure, remove any of the episodes and easily connect what's left over together. You could do this in the Odyssey, and you can actually do this with the Hobbit. So if they never encountered the trolls, would they have continued going up the mountains to Elrond's place? The answer is yes. If they never talked to Elrond, would they have been able to continue and get captured by the goblins? The answer is yes. Now, Elrond is providing information that's important for them on their journey. So each little episode has some critical important thing that is either going to set them back, like getting their ponies captured, when they blind the Cyclops and he calls out to his father Poseidon. Of course, that has big repercussions for Odysseus' crew, so there's things that set them back and things that move them forward, just like in the Odyssey and the Hobbit. But each little episode you would see is just one point on the journey, rather than what you get with these kinds of 3, 5-act situations. If you were to remove a chapter or an event, the story wouldn't make sense. The story would fall apart as a result. So in this case, it's really about all of the stops along the way. Now, Tolkien, this is an interesting point I want to make here on this book, The Fellowship of the Ring. You wonder why I use green so much for fantasy. Green to me doesn't just mean fantasy, it means Odyssey. It means an adventure, not just through the forest, but across many strange lands. The first book in The Lord of the Rings is really an Odyssey. You have kind of a long exposition where you're setting up the conflict for the entire narrative. But from then on, from the point that Frodo and his friends step out the door and go through the Old Forest, the Barrow Wights, the Barrow Downs, this is how the movies were able to cut so much out of this book in particular. The first movie was able to cut so much out is that this is an Odyssey plot structure. So even though it's very important that they go to the Barrow Downs because, they recover the ancient swords, which end up, one of them ends up killing the Witch King in the third book. Spoilers. I'm sure you guys know about this story or have heard about the movie. It's easy to excise from a movie if you're running too long on plot, which there's a lot of plot in that first book, because you just can cut that chapter out. You can cut Tom Bombadil out. Each of those is a little encapsulated story that contributes to the whole. So Fellowship of the Ring is really an Odyssey and represents the first act, if you will, of the entire narrative. And when we get to the end of Fellowship of the Ring, you have that big event which signals the transition into a second act, which is you have Boromir attack Frodo and try to take the ring. And from that point on, Frodo and Sam are continuing their Odyssey, but everybody else is having a different reaction, this kind of middle act reactionary chaos element. Our Merry and Pippin have been captured, so the middle book is really all about the chaos of reacting to Boromir trying to take the ring at the end of this. So if you look at Lord of the Rings as a big thing, you could see a 3-act plot structure, but if you look at just this, it's definitely an Odyssey. It's a series of episodes that move them closer. They have to try to climb over the mountain. It doesn't work. They have to go through Moria. Bad things happen that set them back. Gandalf gets killed by the Balrog. They find their way to Lothlorien. They get attacked by orcs. All these things happen. All these things happen as a series of encapsulated events, and that's what makes an Odyssey plot structure. Now, I have used it as well. So in this book, which actually you can get a free copy of the ebook, I think right now, if you join my mailing list, dbspress.com/list. Usually goes out a week after you've joined. This is one of my favorite books that I had a great time writing, and it is an Odyssey. So Helga has a goal. She has to go and get this magical artifact called the Water of Awakening from some strange beings that live on the edge of reality, what they call the Feylands, and beyond that is some sort of chaos and dreamlike affair. But each little chapter is a little geographic area and a little event that moves Helga closer to her journey or sets her back from actually being able to accomplish her quest. So I used an Odyssey plot structure for this. She goes there and back again, just like with the Hobbit, just like with the Odyssey. If you think about the Iliad is, Odysseus going there, and the Odyssey is him coming back again. That is something that really resonates with this format. Very popular in fantasy, very popular in the romances, broad set of styles. Fantastical journeys are a big thing in fantasy and science fiction, and we really draw a lot of inspiration from them because it's inspiring to have people traverse wild and fantastical landscapes. Also, when you're writing an Odyssey-style plot structure, you don't have to plot as heavily. You can plot each of those episodes. You could write as you go if you wanted to. So it's great for pantsers. And you can also write longer books than you otherwise would, as long as each area that you are adventuring in happens to have its own beginning, middle, and end. It has its own little plot. Then you can have as many of those as you want. Each one could be like a little Star Trek episode until you finally get to the end of your journey and do what you're going to do. Prince Caspian? Journey of the Dawn Treader, from C.S. Lewis, is an Odyssey. They're going on a ship across many fantastical lands, and each chapter is a different little island that they visit on their way. So there's many examples, probably way more than I can think of off the top of my head, that fit this particular plot structure. But it's great because you can write the book long or short. It can be as long or short as you want it to be, as long as you can keep each chapter really interesting and have like a lesson learned or something gained or lost. Then you can keep the reader hooked all the way to the end. So great for pants writers, great for people who want to have a story that feels really epic. So you can, of course, get mine. It's on Amazon as well if you want to buy it. I think it's $2.99, and the paperback obviously a little bit more expensive. But if you want to get it, it's called Water of Awakening. The sequel, Needle Ash, does not use that plot structure, but uses a broader 3-act plot structure that's thus divided into 3 acts for each act. So it's kind of 9 acts. It's a little bit different, and I'll talk about that probably some other time. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.